Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Blueville Wellness Show. I am your host, Christy Murray, Catholic nurse practitioner, and this is the place where we explore faith, food, and function because true wellness nourishes the body, the mind, and the spirit. Today's conversation matters because we are living in a time where we are exhausted, we're inflamed and hormonally imbalanced, and often undernourished. Despite eating regularly, we have more food than ever, yet we are deeply nutrient deficient. And sometimes the solution isn't more supplements, it's going back to what worked. I'm really excited for our today's guest, James Berry. James is a chef, an author, and the founder of Pluck, the first organ based seasoning line that makes ancestral nutrition easy and delicious. And with more than 20 years in the culinary world, including time as a private chef for, guess what? Celebrities like Tom Cruise and George Clooney, James understands both flavor and function. But what makes him unique is his mission to bring nutrient dense ancestral foods back in the modern kitchen without intimidation or overwhelm. We don't need any more overwhelm in our daily lives. So, through his work and his Everyday Ancestral podcast, he helps people connect or reconnect with the wisdom of how our ancestors ate and how it impacts our energy, our mood, and vitality today. So, James, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have a deep dive with you in this conversation about organ meats, ancestral wisdom, and how we can nourish families.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I can't think of another food that I would call Mother Nature's multivitamin. That this is truly, in my judgment, God's food. It is one of the most nutrient dense foods in the world. It's what got us here, in this Homo sapien body, and yet, sadly, we just seem to be avoiding it. I don't know why. I mean, I have ideas of why, but it's interesting that we just continue to have this very mixed relationship with these this God food.
Yeah, I think with art, with technology and like everything, we just chase the first shiny object, right? So like the newer it is, yeah, we perceive it as better.
I think you're right. It is fascinating. We are so fixated on these kind of magic pills that we think that there's going to be this one thing that we can take that's going to solve everything. And it's so fascinating. You mentioned, the podcast I have in Everyday Ancestral. I've been now interviewing people for about a year and a half, and we come out with an episode every week. So I don't know what that is times, a year and whatever, 16 months times four, right?
Mhm.
Um, and every single conversation, it always boils down to you cannot escape the foundations. It doesn't matter what new trend is happening. Like even peptides, everyone's talking about peptides now. The peptides will not work if the foundations are not there. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, if your stress levels are high and you're not moving, if you're not doing those four things, there is no magic pill that will effectively work.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like being in the hormone space, a lot of women come to me thinking they need hormones. Like, oh, I'm feeling this, this, and this, but I think my estrogen is low, so give me some estrogen. And I was like, well, what's going on in your life and what are you doing? And, so then, like, of course, like when comfortable, they tell me what's going on. And then we go back to the whys and then, like, why do I want to get better? And why is this happening? Because, like, you can teach people as much as give them as much information, give them as much tools, but it all boils down to how can they implement it? And then, like you said, the foundations. Like, you
And I
can't
think
supplement a bad diet.
you really can't. You can't outrun it. And I think what you said at the top of this basically that we are living in a very stressed out state, and so we cannot underestimate like even the idea of like, well, why are we craving these magic pills?
Hmm.
And I think it's because we're so overwhelmed that we don't even want to take the time to slow down and actually feel what we're feeling, because most people are just going paycheck to paycheck. And when you're in that kind of situation financially, you don't have time to consider like, well, should I have a Big Mac or should I have a homemade meal? I just need to eat,
Yes.
right? I just need to eat right now. So what is available in this moment? And so you're not thinking the nutrients of the food you're eating. You're just thinking about fuel. I just need to fuel
Mhm.
my body. And then, of course, then you have the other side of the scale where people are so overthinking everything that they're actually creating stress around their food choices. And
Yep.
I think both situations, neither is right or wrong, but they're all contributing to this, either an overwhelm in some way, an over processing of information. I think we're getting so inundated with information we don't know how to pick and choose what actually works. And
Mhm.
and what I really talk about a lot with, and I hope we can dive into in this call, which is, we're all looking outward for answers, but
Mhm.
we are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat. There's 9 million species. So how are we so special? And my offering is that we are not that special, and that the answers are not outside ourselves, they're inside. But to do that, we've got to slow down, and we've got to take a breath, and we've got to eat sitting, at a table, and we've got to eat
Mhm.
slow, and we've got to eat real food, and we've got
Yes.
to eat slow enough so that the communication from eating real food, real nutrient dense food, will get communicated, what's happening chemically in our body, energetically in our body, and then it communicates to our brain and says, okay, I'm good, stop, or I need X, or I need Y. But I guarantee the answers that we have within are going to be more long lasting than anything we can get outside ourselves.
I agree. I love that you talk about communication because, like, on the go, you mentioned, okay, is your option is Big Mac or like prep this like long, you have to cut and prep and marinate and all that stuff. And then there's another portion of like people eating on the go. Oh, I'm just gonna like drink juice. This has a lot of nutrients. And so you're drinking the calories, and like the downside to that is, yes, it's fast, but that's the only like upside to it. The other thing that it does to your body is people don't realize is that our body is meant to like eating is meant to start with like olfactory senses. So you're like you get your olfactory senses going, you like your food, and you sit down and slow down. You chew your food, it's mastication. That's how your body's supposed to work. We're not supposed to just like inhale or drink our calories. It starts from our mouth. We digestion starts from the mouth. And if you just keep feeding your intestines like ready, like pre-processed food, sooner or later it's not going to take real food.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think about that communication, like, you know, I don't even know if this is the best example, but I'll try it. It's the first time I'm equating this. But if you're trying to communicate to someone, like if you have something to communicate, just one on one, are you going to stand in front of them and just not open your mouth, not use your words? You're just going to sit there and be quiet and hope, and think what you want to tell them, but not actually say it. Like you're gonna that would be idiotic, right? Because you'd be the person would
Mhm.
be like, what do you want? And you're just
Why
sitting
are
there
you
all
staring at
quiet,
me?
right? You're not saying anything. So in that situation, for you not to use the communication pathway, the biological process that we have to communicate, would be ignorant. It would be obscene, right? It would just be, why? Why would you not do that? The same goes on the other side, is that this body we're in, this Homo sapien body, has a communication pathway. You just mentioned it. It's the senses, right? You have to sensorially eat your food. You have to chew it. You have to eat foods that have nutrients. That those nutrients, the flavor ancestrally equals nutrition. So in that sense, it's not about just eating food that has flavor, but you
Mhm.
want to really look for two big criteria. One is that the food has flavors that are found in nature. So not
Mhm.
natural flavors, because we know that those are added, right? And
Yep.
natural flavors have lots of ingredients, not just one flavor. And they're not necessarily, yes, they might be coming from a natural source, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily natural to the body, right? So we're
Mhm.
looking for foods that have flavors found in nature. And then the other criteria is that it's nutrient dense food. And what's nutrient dense food? Well, it's usually food that is an ingredient versus has ingredients.
Oh, I love that.
right? So those two criteria, then you are required to eat it, and through this your sensorial process or the neural lingual response, you get your body gets signals from that process, and those signals then go to your brain and communicate, when do I stop, how much more do I need, what else do I need. And then it's literally all working, because this body has been around a long time, a lot longer than these ultra processed foods that we currently have in our diet. So in many ways, I think if you truly think ancestrally, what were these pathways designed to really communicate? And it's two very basic but very serious outcomes. One
Mhm.
is this food going to nourish me? And
Yep.
two or is this food going to kill me? Those two outcomes were that serious back in the day, because the food really could kill you if you did something, if you ate a mushroom that you didn't know what it was, it could
Mhm.
kill you. If you ate food that had been not stored properly or not cured properly, you could die.
Mhm.
So it was a very serious proposition when you went to eat. So you really did rely on these senses, and we can even think of a basic sense right now. Like, for example, when a food is bitter,
Mhm.
the bitter flavors, while there are many foods that are bitter in our diets that are beneficial, the bitter flavor is designed to tell you, is something poisonous or not, right? Because foods that are high in certain chemicals that are poisonous to our body are usually bitter. Salt is a signal of when, like, so the salty taste, that's going to be a signal of electrolytes or hydration, right?
Mhm.
Sugar, sweet, that's going to be a signal of calories, right? Something sweet, it's going to have more calories, which are going to provide even more, energy to you
Energy.
potentially, right? And then of course there's sour as well. Sour is also a communication point, and then there's basically two others that they think exist. So I just mentioned the ones we all grew up with learning. So sweet, sour, bitter, salty, right? But there's two others. One's umami, which
Oh.
is like savory, and they discovered this one in Japan in around the late 80s, early 90s. And that one is best described as meaty or savory. So we think umami is more behind like protein, like the basically things that have protein are usually more umami. It's not truly across the board, because like tomatoes can be umami, so it's not 100%, but usually, like all meat, seafood, it's all umami, right?
Okay.
So things that with protein are typically more umami. But then there's a sixth, and the sixth one is only now just being kind of identified, but it's rancid. Food that is rancid, it has a very unique taste, rancid food. But if anyone's ever had any rancid food, like when you drink milk that's gone bad, right? It's a
You'll know.
very specific taste. And what's your initial reaction is you want to get it out, right?
Yeah.
But imagine if that rancid milk was in a capsule.
Oh, yeah.
So you drink the milk, your body has a reaction, this rancid milk, and your body says, "Oh, that's bad, get it out," right? But if you
Mhm.
was in a capsule, we would
You won't
swallow
know.
that rancid milk and we get no communication until our stomach started turning and the capsule had been absorbed inside your stomach and your intestines, and then you start getting sick and nauseous and you're like, what's going on? Oh, I got rancid milk. So that's an example of you're using these communication pathways for survival versus you're bypassing all of them, which is sadly what our modern society is supporting. Is we're eating, as you mentioned, we're eating lots of food, calorie rich food that is low in nutrients, and then we're nutrient deficient. And where do we turn to support getting nutrition? Is we go to the supplement industry, we swallow all these capsules, and we hope that they're solving this the process. But of
Mhm.
course, none of it is that clear cut. It never works as linearly as we would hope.
Yeah, I agree. I love that communication that you you described. And I didn't know that with the umami is great, and then the rancid. I love that how you said, it's like we package things. It's almost like to trick people, right? Hey, we package it, make it all pretty, but then your body doesn't recognize it, doesn't know how to process it. And then you just like, okay, what's happening with me? Oh, I'm sick. What made me sick? And we're not really keeping track of what we put in our bodies.
Yeah, in many ways, there's so many ways we could talk about this, but I feel like the most kind of just simple way is like, is this body is very sacred. This body we're in is so sacred, and it's so miraculous. If you think about, like, I've sadly known a few people, a few of my friends' fathers killed themselves with alcohol. They literally drank themselves to death. Now, you would go like, "Oh, that's so sad," but what's so fascinating about that is that this didn't happen until they were in their late 60s or early 70s. So that means, and they started drinking, in their teens, right? So that means for nearly 60 years, their body was able to survive and exist despite being poisoned with alcohol. Like, that is a miracle.
Yeah.
That's not like, "Oh, poor them." I mean, yes, of course, we wish that alcohol didn't do this to people. We wish people didn't have addictions, but it's a testimony of how miraculous this body is and how you can do so much damage to it, and yet it will still survive because this body wants to survive. It is precious.
Hmm.
And I think that when we really start to shift our mindset around the sacredness and preciousness of this vessel we're in, maybe we'll start rethinking what foods we feed it with. Because if we see ourselves as precious and sacred, then maybe we'll start choosing precious and sacred foods.
Yeah. It's kind of like, your house. Will you let bad stuff inside your house? Will you just leave your doors open like, hey, come on, dirt, come on, like all the dirty stuff? What we want is, hey, sweep it and keep it clean from the inside. So James, I want to
Absolutely.
ask you, so you talk a lot about ancestral food. Like what got you into this path? And why ancestral foods and like why organ meats?
Yeah, it's really a few reasons, and I could probably list them, break it down into three. So one One is I've been in an industry a long time. I've been a professional chef for over, basically, I think now 22 years, and I have seen so many trends coming. I feel like I've seen it all. I've seen all these different food trends happen. I've seen psychic nutritionists. I've worked with doctors. I've worked with dietitians. I've worked with naturopaths. I mean, I feel like I have been in the health field supporting people's health for 22 years. I've seen all the different diets come and go, change names. First it's veganism, now it's plant-based, right? It's like, Atkins, eventually became low carb, and then eventually, even though I know they're slightly different, but keto.
Yeah.
It's like I just feel like I've seen it all. And what it all, like I said earlier, like, even with all the new medical things that happen, we still cannot escape the basic pillars of health, and the same goes with food. We cannot escape just the basic criteria of what we eat. It just needs to be real food. Like, that's the basic low level criteria. And in my 22 years, no matter what has come out, it's always defaulted to that. So one is just time in the industry. One is just my experience. It just always leads me back to just keep it real and keep it as basic as it can be. I would say then the other big factor is becoming a father. As a chef, I've always been fascinated and wanting to make healthy food delicious and make it accessible for people. But it was becoming a father that really, like, just really made me laser focused towards what matters in
Mhm.
the food we put in our kids, and even myself, because I wanted to live long enough to experience my kids as they get older. So really prioritizing what is healthy food, not the illusion of health to me, or the illusion of health, because they're really just, expensive candy bars, right?
Hmm.
Like there's so many things out there where it's the illusion of health. People market it like it's so healthy, but I want foods that really are healthy. And really, because we're in such a modern society of this marketing machine, and there's so much confusion around diets and all the noise, that for my money, you have to go backwards to really tap into what are the foods that have been consistent through time. What are the foods that help to develop this body we're in? What are the foods that, when no matter what newfangled food comes out, when they compare all the foods, and anyone can do the search, like what food comes out as just being the most nutrient dense, and anyone can do that search, and beef liver will be the item that is listed. They'll compare it to kale, they'll compare it to salmon, they'll compare it to blueberries, even beef. And it's the only food that ticks off every vitamin and nutrient that they're measuring. Every other food will be missing something,
Mm.
but not beef liver. So that there right there told me, okay, this really is the most nutrient dense food on the planet. So then it was like, how do I get it into my kids, and how do I get it into my diet? Because I had my own hurdles and limitations, and of course most kids do as well.
Hmm.
So I would say those are the main reasons. And then I would say the third one for why ancestral life is, it's because I feel very strongly that it's not necessarily about, I feel like I'm always either hearing about people being like, okay, modern life, let's biohack. So let's go really extreme in one direction. And then I feel like you then see other people that are like, no, no, let's go ancestral. Let's take off our shirts and pretend we're cave people. And I think neither really fit, because I'm not going to do either. I'm not going to be hyper tech, but I'm also not going to be hyper. I'm not going. I'm not a, what's the word? Like I'm not a an Amish person. Like I'm not going to go to pretending that none of this tech exists. You know what I mean? Like I feel like the answer is somewhere in the middle,
Hmm.
and so that's why I get really fascinated with tapping into these ancestral foods, but figuring out how to incorporate them in our modern society.
Yeah, wow. It's like you've done like a really great job in like molding those two together. So like the seasonings that you have from organ meats is genius because it's easy, it's convenient, and it's nutrient dense.
Thank you. And it really did come from, like I mentioned, the fatherhood of, I was watching my youngest, well, both of my kids got Shiga toxin, which is a form of E. coli, and it's deadly for those that are,
Oh, wow.
young kids, and for the elderly. It's something you can't do, you can't give antibiotics for.
Hmm.
And you really, the person who has E. coli can't hold anything in. And so usually you're recommended that to just let it pass. Well, for my oldest child, it did pass in about 3 days. So she was fine. But my youngest, who was already very slender and lean, it would not stop. Like she couldn't eat, drink, swallow anything and keep it in for it. I think it went on for like 8 days. And so as her parent, I'm watching her just go skin and bones. She looked so skinny. It was so scary. And she was only 1 year old. She was one
Oh,
year old at the time. So
man.
it was just it was really scary. But I remember thinking to myself, because the one food she finally was able to keep in after, I think it was on either day 9 or 10, was toast. And anyone that's ever gotten sick knows that when you finally find one food that's not going to make you sick, then you get addicted to that food for a while, right? You won't eat anything but that one food, and that's what
Mhm.
happened. She just would not eat anything but toast, and I just kept thinking, I wish there was something I could just put on that toast that wouldn't remove the safety she was feeling from eating
Mhm.
toast, but that would add nutrients to it. And I think that was the moment where my brain started really thinking about something I could sprinkle on. But it took me, I
Mhm.
mean, I didn't even come up with pluck for, I think, another year
Mhm.
after that experience. But I have to think that that was the experience that really got me thinking about it.
Uh-huh.
Because I really do think it's important, particularly with kids, We cannot underestimate the emotions we tie to food. You know, we're emotional eaters. When life is chaotic, we turn to food to keep
Comfort
us
food.
safe, comfort us, right? And I think whenever you're trying to transition someone diet wise, or just change something about their lifestyle, you've got to still support them in feeling safe. And one of the best ways to do that with kids is to let them eat the foods that
Mm-hmm.
are helping them to feel safe while you're transitioning something. And that's beautifully what pluck is. Like, if let's just say your kid's like a dino chicken nugget
Yeah.
and ketchup, and you're trying to transition them off that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the power of pluck is you could add it to the ketchup, and it will just make the food taste better, but it won't they'll still be able to eat the dino nuggets. And now they're getting some of this multivitamin into their diet. And as they
Mm-hmm.
get more and more of those nutrients, and their palate actually starts to open up, because pluck is very umami. So like what we were talking about earlier, that umami, as children get it, it actually helps to expand their palate and welcome in new flavors. And a lot of times kids start become less picky. They become more and more adventurous.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, but more importantly is they feel safe while they're doing it. So if your kid's eating
Mhm.
mac and cheese, no problem. You put pluck on there. So basically what we say is, if you can salt it, you can pluck it. And so
Oh,
what I
okay.
did, just to clarify for anyone that doesn't know what pluck is I took organ meats that already exist in nature. You know, we're getting them from cows. These organ meats we're getting from 100% grass-fed cows from New Zealand. Very clean area, very green grass,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's an island, so they get year-round grass, and it's a very one of their top exports. So they put a lot of care into that industry, because they make a lot of their money from it, and they make it almost nearly every part of the animals is accessible in that country. So we're sourcing it from really clean places. But basically, what we're doing is we're taking the modern technique of freeze drying. So we're taking these ancestral organs, but we're freeze drying them to preserve them. Now they're just like a powder, like no different than a seasoning, really. Like the way when you freeze dry or dry garlic, it's now shelf stable. It won't go bad. It won't start sprouting, another plant, or anything like that. Um, so we take the freeze-dried powdered organ meats, and we combine them with salt and organic spices and herbs, and we make them tasty. Because one of the big hurdles with organ meats is people think they're gross. They think they
Yeah.
don't taste good. So with pluck, we make it shelf stable. We make it so you just keep it in your spice drawer, or even on your countertop, so you use it regularly, and it tastes really delicious. So we remove the hurdle of the ick taste. We remove the hurdle of thinking you have to cook it or know how to cook it, because you can literally just sprinkle it on anything, to go food, popcorn, any food you've already cooked. You can just sprinkle it right on top. And every time
Mhm.
you do, you're getting the micro dosing of that organ meat, but you're getting it frequently, because we salt our food every time we eat, right? So just
Mhm.
that's what we tell people: just pluck your food every time you eat. And in that micro dosing starts to accumulate. And so by the
Mhm.
end of the day, you're potentially getting nearly like a tablespoon of this seasoning daily. And literally your nutrient load starts to increase every single day from it.
I love that you said you're not only increasing the nutrient load, but you're actually like conditioning your body to function properly
You
the
really
way
are. I mean,
your
that
blood
is our
cells.
mission, is to help people feel better in their
Mhm.
body. Because we believe that most chronic illness, I would say the majority of chronic illness, is a nutrient deficiency in some way. And so by getting more nutrients in your diet, particularly from foods that are not only nutrient dense but easily absorbable, so bioavailable,
Mhm.
uh, you're going to start feeling better in your body, because you're no longer going to be nutrient deficient. And once we feel better in our body, we start treating people better, because we treat people how we
Yes.
feel.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So you talked about nutrients. So what do you think like nowadays is the nutrient that's most deficient, and like what does the organ meats address that uniquely?
Well, they have, like, I would say people are very deficient in B vitamins. A lot of times when you have, because B vitamins are also fat soluble, so you really
Mhm.
need to be, if you are taking them in supplement form, you need to be taking. You can feel nauseous if you don't, but most people are just not getting the B vitamins. Um, or sufficient amounts. And what's fascinating is that, B12 is one of them, for example. And B12 is in beef. Like if you're eating meat, you should be getting B12. But what's fascinating, and this is why we really have to think about the source of where we're getting our food of these vitamins, is that I know people who they eat meat and they get tested and their B12 is very low.
Yes.
And yet, so then when they switch to eating liver or organs, it goes up. So you would go like, well, why is it that they're not getting it from muscle meat, but they can get it from liver? And what I would probably offer, and I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but what I would offer is that when we are stressed out, which we identify, most of us are stressed out all the time,
Hmm.
you don't create hydrochloric acid very well. And hydrochloric acid is what supports the breakdown of the food you eat. And if we're not breaking down the food we eat, we're not going to absorb the nutrients appropriately.
Hmm.
When you have low hydrochloric acid, that means you're going to be eating that meat, but it's not going to be digesting properly. And most likely, even when it leaves your body, through your excrement, you're going to see pieces of that food
Yeah.
still in your body. That means it did not digest properly. So thus, if it didn't digest
Hmm.
properly, that means you also didn't get the absorption. But if anyone has ever left organ meat on a counter, like take a ribeye, take a liver, leave them on the counter for 2 hours and watch what happens to the liver. The steak will just kind of still be there, and maybe there'll be some globulin kind of out leaving it, but for the most part, its structure is just there.
Hmm.
The beef liver will almost look like it's melting.
Oh.
It just, the structure is, it's not as, like, it doesn't have the same muscle fibers that the
Hmm.
muscle meat does, and so it's just so kind of like, the texture is different. I mean, it's more spongy almost. It's like it's slimy. It's like, but all to say, it's that structure that breaks down easier in your body. So even if you're compromised with your hydrochloric acid, you're still going to absorb liver better than you would muscle meat. So I think it's really like, it's just a testimony of like, it's not always just, well, if you're low in B12, eat beef. It's like, no, no, no. Think about what
The type.
part of the animal you're eating.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is, don't just assume because you're eating a food that is on that healthy list that you're actually being healthy. Because if you're not absorbing that food, if you're still in a stressed out state when you eat it,
Hmm.
it won't matter. It won't matter how well you're eating. So in
Hmm.
any conversation around health, we have to also be thinking about not only what is the food I'm eating, but also what is the state I'm in while
Yeah.
I'm eating it.
Yeah. You talked about hydrochloric acid and stress. So, like when we're stressed, we tend to have a lot of like stomach acid, right? So then, people go to their medical providers. Oh, I'm like I think I have a lot of stomach acids. Then they're given antacids, or they just go over the counter. They get antacids to dilute that hydrochloric acid, but they're not being made aware that, hey, you dilute it too much. Like you said, it's not going to help you break down the food. If it's the food's not broken down, your body's not going to absorb it.
Absolutely. And as you're indicating, it's like having, acidosis, or like that kind of, that acid is not necessarily the same as hydrochloric acid. Like, so that could just be you're eating too many foods that are, acidic in a sense, but it doesn't mean that a lot of times people that have that state, it's because their body is low in hydrochloric acid, and or they're eating foods that are contributing to it. But
Hmm.
yeah, but to your point, when you eat that, the Tums or any of those antacids, you're actually making the situation worse.
Hmm. Yeah.
You're not
So
actually solving it. You're just dealing with a symptom, but you're not dealing with the root cause of why that symptom's there.
It's a band-aid that's covering up.
Yeah, and I know people that are so like in all, in college they just ate those Tums like candy, and they're suffering for it now. You can't escape
Hmm.
these kind of disorders. Like when you have an imbalance, you can only mask it for so long.
Yeah, I agree. So like have you seen shifts in like moods and anxiety resilience when people like start like to increase their nutrient density, like specifically with like the seasonings that you have?
Oh yeah, I mean, people get better sleep, skin issues go away. Yeah, they're just able to moderate their stress levels better. I mean, even a lot of times, heart arrhythmias are very popular. Diagnoses of those are very popular. And what's so fascinating in the industry is that rarely do they actually do a blood panel on the people and see, well, wait, are you nutrient deficient? And in more cases than not, heart arrhythmias are connected to a B vitamin imbalance,
Mm-hmm.
not to just having issues with the heart. It's like, but no one's really told that. So I'm just a big fan of like, look, before you do anything serious like surgeries or anything like that, or go down paths of like extreme pharmaceutical, like first just work with someone who looks at things from a root cause state, a holistic
Mm-hmm.
state. Just start with your food, because the thing that we do the most is the thing you should start with. So I would always go back to those four things. We sleep in some ways just as much as we eat, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
sleep would be something I would be looking at, food for sure, and then movement and stress. I mean, those were where I would start, are those first four pillars. And then if something keeps persisting, of course, like keep going deeper with it and expanding and get support. But I would, I mean, I'm making this number up, but I would venture to say like 75% of most issues would be solved if people just focused on those four things.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe even higher than
Yeah,
75%.
maybe it's 90. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. I mean, there's people I've talked to, like for example, gout. Like, so people, if they get
Mm-hmm.
diagnosed with gout, they're told to not eat red meat. Well, I know a young guy who was diagnosed with gout in his 20s, and he did the exact opposite of what his doctor did. He removed all the processed foods from his diet. He
Mm-hmm.
started drinking raw milk. He still ate meat, but he just ate really clean meat.
Mm-hmm.
Bought the meat himself and made things from scratch versus buying meat that was already made into some dish or something that had ingredients that he control. So basically, he controlled his ingredients. He got lots of sleeping, got lots of sunlight. So those three things, and the gout went away. And there's still people that are like, "You're spreading misinformation." It's like, what? Like, where do we people think the gout comes from? Like, do you think like that back ancestrally people had issues of gout? Like, do we think that all the issues that we're seeing in modern society were just happen to always be there?
Mm-hmm.
It's, to me, it's just absurd. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
other absurd things I've heard, just in that may resonate with people is like, we can't forget. Like, so my brother is only 3 years older than I am. So he was born in 1970. I was born in 1973. When
Mm-hmm.
he was born, my mom was told to not breastfeed. She was told not to breastfeed because
Oh.
they were of the ilk. The science at the time said that is not the best way to raise a child. Give them formula. So they were literally telling people to do the exact opposite from what the body naturally creates.
Mm-hmm.
And then only 3 years later did they start saying, oh, no, no, breastfeeding is the way to go. So that's just one example. I know when I remember at one point, my friend was on, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but she was told that she should be taking the pill for menstruation, that it was more natural for her to take a pharmaceutical for
Yeah.
menstruation than to just focus on diet, and sleep and getting good sun and all these natural things. Like, that's how crazy we get. We
Mm-hmm.
think that the thing that's natural is
Yep.
not the right way to go, and we think that the thing that's laboratory made is the right way. And it's just, to me, that's like, that is so false, and so
Mm-hmm.
many of our medical industry, like people, practitioners still believe it. That's
Yeah.
what's so crazy to me. They've been co-opted. They're just their common sense has been co-opted.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that the birth control, because that is like almost the standard of care for Western medicine. Oh, your periods are painful. Your periods are, like it's not normal, or they've been told that, hey, normal, but it's not, right? And then like, oh, so quick fix, here's birth control, it's birth control, but no, it is. It affects our, like, you put our birth control in our bodies, then like you're suppressing what's naturally supposed to happen. So instead of like addressing what's happening in the cycle, like what could be causing these irregular periods, instead of checking the labs and checking the nutrients, here, let's give them birth control. So then it ends
It,
up in our environment. So what happens to our plants, to our fish, and like, yeah, we can go down this rabbit hole
oh
about.
yeah, and yeah, it's in the water, all these pharmaceuticals. Yeah, it's horrible. And
Mhm,
ultimately it's like we just have to remember, like, we don't live in a bubble. Like like I said, it just, for me, that's why I then I go to the ancestral concept of like, look, I don't necessarily know exactly what they were doing back in the day. Of course, we can only hypothesize, but I I have to believe that
mhm,
prior to all these franken foods, all these processed foods, that people, and also the screens and all, just all the information that's resulting in us needing all these stimulants or decompressants, right? So you either need something to lift you up, like in the form of coffee, or you need something to bring you down so you can actually sleep, right? But I have to think that when we were actually in sync with the sun and the moon, that when we
mhm,
were in sync with our food sources, that the food sources were actually whatever we can find, in nature,
mhm,
that when we were actually like sleeping on the earth, so we were grounding, you know
mhm.
waking up with the sun, going to bed when it was light, so none of this light pollution and EMF kind of stuff. Like,
Yes.
I have to assume
Yep.
that we were more in sync with the natural rhythms of this body we're in, the human
Mhm,
experience, and that we were far better off. I
mhm.
have to assume that. And I think anyone that's not assuming that, I would question, well, who's co-opted your thinking? The
Yes.
person that the person that made the light bulb, the person that made the frankenfood, the person that made
Mhm,
the shoes, or the building you live in. Like, we
mhm.
just don't know. We have to assume that well, here's actually, sorry, this is a funny example. And
Uh-huh.
I think this will be really fun for you and your audience. So, have you ever heard of lemmings?
Oh, those cute animals,
What do
or
you know about lemmings?
they're pack animals and they're cute.
Have you heard how they if they go off of a cliff, they all go off the cliff? Have you ever heard that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's normally what people associate with lemmings, is that this idea of that, oh, don't be the phrase usually used to be like, don't be a lemming, like, don't just be a follower, because the idea is that a lemming, if one of them goes off the edge, they all go off there because they all just follow each other. Okay.
Oh.
But if you actually say, well, how do you know that? Oh, well, I saw a documentary and it showed the lemmings going off the cliff. And so you
Mhm,
think that, well, then that's how lemmings are. That must really be what lemmings are. But if you actually do the research, you find out actually that was a Disney documentary that was done way back in the day on nature, and that they took the lemmings out of their natural habitat and put them in a
uh-huh,
different habitat for the documentary, and that
mhm,
they had an irregular behavior because they were in an environment they didn't know. So
mhm,
you're watching the documentary thinking, oh, this is truth, this is what a lemming is. But the reality is that was a fabricated story. And if you think about it, if that's what they're doing to lemmings, how
uh-huh,
often is that happening in our own lives, where we grow up thinking that something is accurate, that this is how it's supposed to be?
mhm,
But we have to remember that everything is coming through someone's lens,
mhm.
someone's perspective,
Yep.
someone's agenda. And that, I just believe we have to look at things with much softer eyes, and just remember that nothing is exactly what we're being told, because it's
Mhm.
coming from someone else's desired outcome. And so
Yep.
that's once again why we have to go inward. We have to go inward and just take a breath. Like I always think about if someone ever gets diagnosed with something that we associate with being serious, like cancer or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you usually, right when you hear a diagnosis like that, where do you think the person goes? Do you think they immediately go like to the to other people and say like, help me, or do they go upward and they say, please, why did I, or do they go inward? Which thing, right? Going
Yeah.
upward or inward is something bigger than me. Why am I getting this? Please help me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inward experience. So if that's what we do when something that we perceive to be a death sentence is what we're diagnosed with, why couldn't we do that every single day and be going inward and asking those questions, treating ourselves like we're sacred and that we're precious, and like really like taking that moment within ourselves to ask, what do I need? What's going to fill me?
Mm-hmm.
What will be sacred for this sacred body? You know what I'm saying? Like, why can
Yeah.
we not start to ask these questions and really just and listen for the answer?
Yeah, I love that. We are vessels, and it is our job to make sure the vessel is clean, that we're like you mentioned, filled, not like fueled and not like overfilled. So
Yeah.
just enough so we're functioning properly, so we treat people better, because when we do feel better, we we are nicer people.
And I get it that sometimes people will feel like I just don't have time. I know that
Mhm.
time is that currency that just seems to always outpace us. But the truth is that we do have the time. We just have to make it. And
Make it,
and
yeah.
to make that time, you have to change the perspective, because the
Mhm.
perspective that we're walking around with right now is that someone else's needs matter more, that
Uh-huh.
that that I want to get the best price I can for something. I want to save my money or whatever, or spend my
Mhm.
money on other things, not
Uh-huh.
my food. And then maybe the third is that that I have to do this, like that they're putting pressure on themselves that they have to
Mhm.
perform at a certain level. But the reality is, for all three of those points, one is that if you don't spend the money now, you're going to spend it in hospital bills later, because you can't escape the cost
Mhm.
of bad health. You just can't.
Yeah.
Not that healthy food has to be expensive, but sadly, groceries are expensive. I mean, it's just sadly, it's like
Mhm.
we are spending a lot of needing to spend a lot of our money on groceries now. And I know that that's different from even 5 years ago, but historically, it's not. Like if you think about it, even back in the day, most of their expenses went to their food. Like
Mhm.
sometimes about 70% of their resources went to their food, because the food was what sustained you and allowed you to keep coexisting in this world, right? To live and love, right? So
Mhm.
so in reality, it's just within the last 50, 60 years that changed, when, during the Industrial Revolution, after World War II as well, like food just got so cheap. And so people got used to only spending about 30%. But historically, we spent way more than that. Most of our paycheck was towards food.
Mhm.
So while I also don't like that it's got so expensive, I think we still have to reframe it and just see it as
Mhm.
like, look, this is what's going to get me to 20 years from now. This is what's going to get me to
Mhm.
30 years from now. So I'm going to spend it now so that my
Mhm.
quality of life is high,
Yeah.
in terms of, being able to use this body. But we really have to shift that mindset, and I think once we see it as possible, then we can start
Mhm.
actually embracing it. But you have to see it as possible. You have to be willing to just assume that maybe how you're doing it is not the only way.
Mhm.
That maybe there's another way. And honestly, for my money, where that starts is the minute you tell yourself that it's impossible. Take a breath. Just take a breath and just notice where that impossibility is in your body. So notice where the energy feels stuck or where you feel tight,
Mhm.
and just observe it and then take another breath and just try to release it. Don't try to solve it. I'm not telling you that the world's going to be solved in a day, but just observe it, and that will be a step towards you starting to find the time and starting to make the changes you need to do for your desired outcome.
Mhm. I agree. It's like investing in yourself right now would actually yield a better return on investment later on. Because being a healthcare provider, there's a lot more all these medications. So the goal is to take care of yourself right now. And so you won't have to need all these things later.
And let's face it, the government wants us to rely on these things.
Like, yes.
So we play into their game when we rely on pharmaceuticals, when we rely on these broken systems, these very inhumane systems.
Hmm.
Like we play right into the billionaires' desire. Really, in many ways, not to be conspiracy theorists, but like billionaires run this world. They run this world. The amount of companies that actually produce the food we eat, it's something like seven. It's between 7 and 9 companies, something like that. They
Mm.
we live in a world like if that so few companies control everything we eat, everything that's distributed to restaurants, to cafeterias, to our markets, our grocery stores, that if something goes wrong in one part of their chain, their supply chain, it affects
Hmm.
millions and
Yeah.
millions of people. And that's why you see sometimes these salmonella outbreaks in like spinach of all things, right? And
Uh-huh.
you just hear how many people get sick and how disruptive that becomes, is because
Yes.
we're relying on very narrow
Hmm.
channels of supply chain from
Hmm.
like 9 companies.
Yeah. So you mentioned, yeah, so supply chain and then spinach. I personally, I have a hydroponic tower in
Good for you.
my kitchen area because like and talking about investment, I mean it's not a cheap device, but I love it. My kid, I know where my food's coming from, and like when my kids want salad, I just say the scissors right there, go get salad, and it's so fresh. Like I don't even need to rinse it. I mean, of course I do rinse it, but really you can walk by and just like grab, some piece of lettuce and just chew it on your way out. It tastes different. It lasts longer. And, it's like for me, I'm especially living in Alaska where we can only grow food like what, 2 months, 2 months a year outside. And this is really like one of the best investments I've ever like brought to my family.
Yeah, the more you can control the food you eat, the
Hmm.
supply chain of your personal supply chain, the better. And yeah, I absolutely think that growing your own food is one. I think eating and purchasing the whole animal as much as possible is the key too. I mean, I know like I seem to remember reading about the Inuit in Alaska, that within that community, they in their nutritional data or their nutritional board, their health board, they
Hmm.
list organ meats as a fruit and vegetable,
Oh.
because seasonally you can't grow in that area,
Hmm.
fruits and vegetables year round. But they recognize that if you're not eating fruit and vegetables, you better be getting those vitamins from another source, because you don't want to get rickets, or you don't want to have a vitamin C deficiency or something because you're not eating fruit, right? But
Hmm.
guess what? Vitamin C exists in organ meats. Like organ meats have these vitamins.
Hmm.
It has the vitamin A, it has the vitamin B, as we talked about earlier. It even has C, it has K,
Hmm.
K2. It's like it has these vitamins. In many ways, the organ meats, if you look at science, what science tells you need to have for a prenatal to create life, all the vitamins like the folate,
Hmm.
selenium, all the vitamins and minerals, it's all in
Iron.
organ meats, all
Yeah.
of it. Like literally every single one of it is in organ meats. And when people say, "But I need to take a prenatal," well, what did they do? Prenatals only came around, I think, in the 60s.
Hmm.
So what did they do in the 50s, 40s, 30s? You don't even have to go you don't even have to go down, 100,000 years ago. Like, what were they doing in 1910? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, what were they doing before this thing you're telling us everyone has to do? Like we were talking about earlier about the pill, right? What were they doing
Mhm.
before the pill? Those hormones.
Yes.
Like, what were they doing? What were they
Exactly.
doing, before this modern phenomena? You
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think we did this to ourselves. We've manufactured styrofoam for convenience. We have like all these containers and like plastic. Oh, it's easy, it's light, and yeah, we can go down that rabbit hole. So I wanted to ask you, so like if a busy working mom wanted to improve her family's nutrition this week, so where should she start?
Well, first off is start in your kitchen. So first thing I say is, okay, what is your desired outcome? So let's just say it's weight loss. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I have no stop. Like, so if you put ice cream in my freezer, I will figure out how to eat it. I will find a reason to eat it. If there's chips, I will figure out how to eat it. So if my desired outcome is weight loss,
Uh-huh.
then the first thing I would do is not bring any of the foods that will prevent me from that desired outcome into my kitchen. Because if it's not in my kitchen, I still may feel the desire to eat it or want it, but now I've made it really hard for myself to get it. And I find most of the time, if I don't have it in my kitchen, that feeling dissipates. If I go and do something else, like go for a walk, it dissipates. And or if I just drink water, sometimes we mistake cravings for dehydration. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's the first thing I do is I'd go in my kitchen, I'd identify what is my desired outcome, and then I would make sure that my kitchen honored that desired outcome. So if it's not in my kitchen, I won't eat it. So no junk. It doesn't mean you can't eat junk, but you just make it hard for yourself. So if I want ice cream, instead of buying ice cream, I force myself to go to this, like go out to get it. And I promise you, you won't eat it as much because it's expensive and it also is a pain. It's like,
Uh-huh. Yeah, you have to
it's
get
just a
vegetables
pain.
for free.
So remove the convenience of the
Mm-hmm.
thing that is preventing you from your desired outcome. The other thing I would recommend is you start meal planning. Meal planning is one of the most underused health tools out there. Meal planning is simply, find a source, whether it's a cookbook, a cooking magazine, just a file of recipes, doesn't matter. Just find a source where you can get creative around what foods you're eating that week, but then also pair it with your schedule. So don't just do one in a vacuum. Don't just look at your cookbook in a vacuum. Like actually look at your schedule. Oh, this on Wednesday, I have meetings all the way up until 5.
Mm-hmm.
So that if in a day that's not planned, that's going to be, oh, you're eating out day. And we don't want to eat out because when we eat out, we're outsourcing our health and there's no way to be healthy if you're eating out. So
Mm-hmm.
on that Wednesday that I'm working till 5, that's a slow cooker day. That's the day where I meal plan and make sure, oh, that's the day where I throw everything in a slow cooker or a pressure cooker. I schedule it and then it cooks for me. It's done at 5. I take off the lid. I'm ready to eat. Right. So make sure that the meal plan fits the schedule that is for us
Uh-huh.
that week. So we're using both sources so that it actually fits our lifestyle, not just someone's lifestyle. Right. So I
Mm-hmm.
would definitely do that. And the other powerful thing about meal planning is that it prevents you from impulse purchases at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you have a list, that list doesn't say, hey, this quart of ice cream's on sale this week. That list doesn't say, hey, buy a soda pop for 99 cents today because it's normally $2.99, right? It's not on your list because you didn't meal plan and say, oh, buy Coca-Cola, right? No one rarely does anyone do that. Rarely, right? So meal planning also helps you with your choices too. And then I would also make sure, and this might sound simple and it may sound like, well, how does this help, my family's health? But it really does, which is make a point, basically, like make it a non negotiable that the family always eats together at the dinner table. Every other meal can be all over the place, but dinner time is
Mm-hmm.
always together and it's at the dinner table.
Yeah. Turn the
Just
TV off.
that one commitment will help you all be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
To guarantee, because and it will also improve relationships within, because if we're
Mm-hmm.
happier, if we're more rested, like if we're getting movement, if we're joyful,
Mm-hmm.
we make better choices. It's when we're not getting good sleep, when we're stressed out, when we're depressed, that's when we make comfort choices and or impulsive choices. So you
Mm-hmm.
really want to create an environment that's as joyful as it can be. And I think if I'll just leave it at those 3, but if you just do those 3 things alone,
Mm-hmm.
It's huge dividend, like hugely changes. I would add maybe a fourth would be just like start drinking more water. So like if you're someone that's not drinking a lot of water, it's surprising how much that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, if you're someone who's needs to ease off the juices or the soda pops, like just start off slowly. Like first thing I would say is like, okay, if you're for every coffee, juice, or soda pop you do, you have to drink 2 glasses of water. So you have to the substance, the
Mm-hmm.
soda, the caffeine, or the sugar from the juice, you have to
Mm-hmm.
do 2 glasses of water. And just start there, and then eventually, like I said, stop buying it, stop bringing it
Mm-hmm.
home, limit it to only 1 cup of coffee a day, kind of thing. Start to maybe incorporate half caffeinated,
Mm-hmm.
half some anything to kind of start to remove
Uh-huh.
the addictive piece and or the stimulus.
Yeah, I love all those tips. You just totally changed my mind about meal planning. Because when I think about meal planning, it's like making the same, like make a big batch of something, and that's your whole meal for the rest of the week. So I love how you look at the schedule, like have a slow cooker day, and have like because like I also heard somewhere like if you plan, what was it? If you fail to plan, you plan. Yeah, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep. Very good. Yeah. And the other thing too is that sometimes, and this is getting a little granular, but like I'm all about, leftovers too, or just eating,
Mm-hmm.
making as much as I can and one batch cooking basically. I'm all for that. But some people are really sensitive, to the histamines. Like when you cook meat, and let it sit or overcook it or let it sit, the
Mm-hmm.
histamines increase, so
Oh.
some foods actually aren't as healthier for you the longer they sit in the
Mm.
refrigerator. Now, other foods like rice, it actually they've proven that white rice, for example, if you cook it and then let it go cold, it actually will not affect your blood sugar as quickly as if it was just warm right after cooking it. So
Or sitting in the
that's one
refrigerator.
food that is actually a little healthier for you the next day, and in a cold state, or a room temperature state.
Mm-hmm.
So I just would offer like start with whatever works for your lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
but as you get the healthier you get, the more granular you can get as well, and you can really start to look at like notice like, hey, I'm doing everything right, but my chronic health issues still aren't going away. So yeah, you can go work with somebody, get testing, but you might also try things like, well, maybe it's all the leftovers I keep eating. Like let's see what happens when I eat food that's more fresh.
Well, that's an awesome idea. I've never really even like looked at it that way. It's like, with convenience, right? People like make this big batch. Oh, it's convenient. We don't have to do much and we can go ski. And I actually wanted to add the other thing that you mentioned about eating together. So my son skis. And we actually have a priest friend who was telling my husband to get him out of skiing because ski practice is during dinner time when we have a family meal.
Yeah, or maybe see if the ski practice can shift or something, or
Hmm.
shift the family meals. Like it
Yeah.
really is. I believe it's one of the most important things we can do
Hmm.
is to eat together, because so much happens at the dinner table. So
Yeah.
much modeling, so much learning, so much
Hmm.
so much potential joy. And so one thing we did at our household, so we were noticing we normally would eat at 5, sometimes 5:30, and the kids were coming home at 3:30, and they
Hmm.
were just they were so hungry, and they would just eat all these. They would be
Snacks.
going through the cupboards and finding snacks or something, whether even
Hmm.
if it was real food, they'd be eating like tons of cheese or tons of fruit or something, right? And so my wife had the brilliance to say, well, why don't we just start eating earlier? Like, let's just have dinner ready earlier. It's a pain for us because that means we have to stop working earlier, but
Hmm.
it really is. It's really worked. The kids aren't snacking as much. We did was move dinner up about an hour, and so now we're eating like 4:30. But
Uh-huh.
what's interesting is you would think, well, that does that mean you're eating more at night? And we're not. Like technically, you eat at 4:30, and you're just satiated. You don't need it again, and we're
Mm.
fine. And we're still going to bed, and no one's snacking as much, and it's fine. And if anything, it's even better because our food is all digested by the time we go to lay down to eat. So then we're not
Mhm.
digesting while we're sleeping. So that gives our body the time to really focus on sleeping and recovery versus
Mhm.
digestion and sleeping.
Wow. Well, James, thank you so much for all these nuggets. I thought we were just going to talk about like seasoning and, and organ meats. I got way more. Um, so, like listeners, I actually have a QR code, and I really want the whole world to know about these genius ideas that you've put together about organ meats, because it takes away a lot of barriers. It's very convenient. It's as close to how our body it will allow it to function optimally, right? Because then there's normal, and then there's optimal.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually going to put a code here to show like our listeners. There we go. So like anyone watching, please get that QR code, and you'll get to James' website where you can like. How many flavors do you have now?
Yeah, we just launched 3 new ones. We have our goal is, like I said, is to help people feel better in their bodies through the use of these nutrient dense foods. And so we are constantly trying to get as many of those organ meats into your diet. And we just launched a brain product because
Oh.
bovine brain is something that people used to eat all the time. It's got fantastic amount of nutrients that we're not getting in our diets very well. And so we now have our original, which is our best seller. We have zesty garlic. We have Southwest. We have habanero lime. Those 4 all use our 5 organ blend, which is liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. And then we have our pure blend, which is just those 5 organs. Then we have our pure brain, which is just brain. And then we have cinnamon, which has the brain in it. So we have 7 SKUs now.
Oh wow. So the cinnamon, huh? You can add to cakes and
Literally. It's the cinnamon you could add to oatmeal, you could add to yogurt, you could put on anything that would, coffee, smoothies.
hmm
You can literally add it to anything that would welcome that cinnamon taste, and it
hmm
has 35% brain in it. So we've been getting
hmm
comments that people just feel more grounded when they use it. Some
hmm
people have said that they feel more focused, which
Okay.
it speaks to this concept of like supports like. So the
hmm
organ, or the part of the animal, doesn't even have to just be organ, but the part of the animal you're eating
hmm
is the part you're supporting. So if you're eating muscle, it's supporting your muscles. If you're eating
hmm
heart, it's supporting your heart. If you're eating liver, it supports your liver. And this is really true when you look at, like, let's just look at heart. Most cardiovascular supplements have CoQ10, which is coenzyme Q10 in it. Well, coenzyme Q10 is found in heart. So it really is. It's a
hmm
nutrient that's in the the cow heart. So if you just eat heart, you're going to get that coenzyme Q10 instead of taking supplements to have it.
Wow. Yeah, this is amazing. So, James, this has been such a powerful and refreshing conversation. And thank you for helping us rethink what nourishment really means and for making ancestral nutrition feel approachable and doable. So, for those of you listening, if this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to visit eatpluck.com and explore what James is building. And if you use code Christy Murray, you get like 15% off. And you can also follow him on Instagram at eatpluck and Chef James Barry for practical inspiration and education. If today's episode spoke to you, please subscribe to the Blue Veil Wellness Show. Share this episode to a friend who is on a health journey and leave a comment below. And I'd love to know, would you try organ based seasoning in your kitchen? And what's a small step you're willing to take toward more nutrient based eating? Remember, caring for your health isn't vanity, it's stewardship. We are vessels, and it's our job to keep our vessel clean and functioning properly. When we nourish our bodies, we show up more fully in our families, our vocations, and the people that God has entrusted for us. So until next time, stay rooted in faith, intentional with your food, and aligned in function. And I'll see you in the next episode.